After the announcement of Metroid Dread, I went ahead and started playing through as many Metroid games as I could before I started to get sick of them. This week we continue with Metroid 2 Return of Samus. I covered the original game last week, so if you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description below. Metroid 2 is a game I have been very aware of since the day I saw a commercial for it back when it was released. Of course, I had played the original game. If you saw my last video, you'd know that I hadn't beaten it until I was much older. Metroid 2, I just never played at all. Never even attempted to play it on emulation. I've never been a huge Metroid fan, but liked the games well enough, so when I finally did get a Game Boy, I just kinda skipped Metroid 2. The thing about games that I've skipped over the years, and you may know my feelings on this if you've watched any of my other recent videos, is that I really like that I saved it this long, because that just means I get to enjoy a great retro game for the first time in 2021. I really liked Metroid 2. It has its issues, sure, but for a Game Boy game released in 1991, it's pretty dang good. The game takes what was unique about the first game and improves on it. Metroid 2 takes place after the first game. As Samus, you travel to SR-388, the home of the titular life-sucking alien species, to exterminate all of them. Over the entire planet, there are only a few dozen, and they evolve past the jellyfish-looking form that you're already accustomed to, so freezing them and blowing them up with missiles isn't really an option here. You can still kill them with missiles, but dodging their attacks and getting out of each encounter alive is a new challenge. The structure of the game works a bit differently than the first game, but you're still placed in a dark, spooky world without any real direction of where to go or what to do, and you still have no in-game map. But Metroid 2 makes the lack of map a bit easier because it slowly feeds you new areas to explore and conquer, only allowing you to proceed as you kill a predetermined number of Metroids in each section. The whole planet is filled with lava, and the lava recedes when you kill the Metroids in an area, and killing the Metroids require you to do some of that famous Metroid exploration, looking for items and power-ups to make your way. You actually start with missiles, which is nice, but you still get to find plenty of missile upgrades littered here and there. And on top of that, there are several new weapons that weren't in the first game, like the Spazer and the Plasma Beam, and some other cool upgrades like the Spider Ball, which I had no idea originated here and thought it was a new thing for Metroid Prime. The Spring Ball and the Space Jump, both of which I thought were new to Super Metroid, not Metroid 2. The cool thing about playing Metroid 2 as was originally intended on the Game Boy, you get to see where some of these powers and game features originate for the series. Sure, the fan game AM2R and Nintendo's own Samus Returns feature energy and weapon refills as well as save stations, but you never know if these were added in as a quality of life feature or if they were in the original game. And they were. I didn't know Metroid 2 was a battery-saved game, and it's cool that it was. I love finding out how games and series evolves like this, and it's the major reason why I wanted to play Metroid 2 on the Game Boy first, rather than play the aforementioned remakes. The game controls a bit better than the first one, though the limited gameplay area due to the size of the Game Boy's screen can pose a bit of a problem, most notably when fighting monsters that fly around. They'll fly off screen, and then they won't come back, so you have to go chasing them, and sometimes it's easy to get too close because of that, and then you take a bunch of damage. It's a little annoying. That's probably one of the game's big flaws. Another one being the music. If you've never played Metroid 2 and have grown accustomed to the awesome soundtracks of the other games, you'll be surprised at the lack of music here. The main theme of the first area is really cool, but then beyond that, it's just a lot of atmospheric Game Boy sounds, and it's not good. You play in relative silence a lot of the time. The game looks really good for an early Game Boy game though. While most of the backgrounds are blank black canvases, the Samus character sprite and the bigger enemies look great. So maybe not the strongest looking game, but it's still pretty okay in this department. One more gripe I have with Metroid 2 is that there are so many wide open spaces without much to do. You just navigate Samus through a lot of empty caves and corridors a lot, without much to shoot at or kill. Sometimes this is fine for exploration's sake, like you aren't being bugged by monsters or anything, but the emptiness does seem really strange. Like the developers didn't know what enemies to place or something, so they just didn't. Still, I liked Metroid 2 and would definitely play it again given the opportunity, like, when I get an actual copy of it. Unfortunately, I don't actually own this game. This might actually be the first game that I don't own a copy of, digital or physical, that I've reviewed. I do plan on grabbing it eventually. I really want to play it on the Game Boy itself. But that does pose a problem for me, because in my reviews for Game Boy games, if only briefly, I like to touch on what the game plays like on its native console. Usually for reviews, I play these on the Super Game Boy and then go back and play it on the Game Boy for a bit to see how it works. It also doesn't help that my original Game Boy isn't working. I imagine that the game probably is blurry as hell when playing on the original Game Boy, you know, when you move around and stuff, but it would be fine on a Game Boy Advance or Super Game Boy. I do recommend playing Metroid 2 in its original form under a few specific conditions. 1. You're a retro game collector and like playing games in your collection. 2. You're a big Metroid fan and want to see what the entire series has to offer. And 3. If you are like me and like seeing the evolution of a game series. I really like seeing the natural progression of Metroid to Super Metroid, and you can really see that here, with the addition of the power-ups and abilities I mentioned earlier, along with things like save points and energy refill stations. But if you don't really meet these criteria and just have a more general interest in Metroid and you want to know more about the Metroid series story, I'd recommend playing either AM2R, which is another Metroid 2 remake, or Nintendo's Samus Returns for the 3DS. But I'll be honest, I haven't really liked Samus Returns on the 3DS that much, mainly due to the controls. I don't like controlling a 2D game with the little control nub. It just doesn't work for me. But they both have the modern conveniences, like, you know, a map. But I do like Metroid 2 for Game Boy. It's a cool game, and I think that you should play it if you meet one of those criteria I mentioned. Thanks for watching. Later.